Good morning and welcome to the Connect in Harmony program on Cairns FM 89.1. I'm your host, Renee Cashman.
And I'm your host, Dave Chambers. Today we have Jocah in with us to talk about the power of tea.
Yes, welcome to the program, Jocah.
Oh gosh. Hello. Hi there to all you listeners out there.
Now, Jocah, most of us drink tea, but it's been used as a way to ingest herbs that benefit our body for thousands of years in Eastern countries. Now, when did tea really start to make an impact here in the West?
Well, actually, that's a very interesting story. But to put that into context, let's just dial back a little bit to the east. So they reckon that it started, the myth is that it was some exotic emperor in about 1500 BC. Some leaves fell in his cup and he goes, oh, this tastes nice, and drank it. That's the myth. No one knows if it's true or not. But
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah. So he must have been sitting next to a very large tea plant.
Yes.
Because that was, the tea Camellia sinensis, as we know. So actually it was started with Portuguese merchants who were bringing the tea back from China to the West and got into the British Empire from there. What became very interesting was a fact that I found out because, I'm an expert in this field. I've read Wikipedia, so I know my stuff. Yeah, so apparently, we know chai attached to India. It was actually the British who brought tea to India. Chai was never a thing in India.
Oh, it came the other way.
It came the other way. It came from Britain, originally from, China to Portugal to Britain to India. When they colonised, they brought tea with them. Who'd have known?
Who'd have known?
I know, right?
Wikipedia knows.
Yeah. Wikipedia knows, that's right.
So Kamal's been lying to us for all these years.
Indeed. So in terms of it gaining popularity in the West, there's a very amusing little story. In 1662, King Charles II married a Portuguese princess by the name of, let's see if I can get this right, Catherine Braganza. She was an avid tea drinker. She had connections with Portuguese, so Portugal traders, etc. And she brought it into her court, and all the ladies just loved it and made this thing called tea time, which still happens. So it was actually her. It's an individual, one person, who popularised it in British history.
Tea time.
Yeah, tea time.
What an effect you've had on history without even realising it.
Yeah. And of course now tea is actually the second most drunk beverage in the world next to water. 3 billion cups per day.
Wow.
That's my little fact.
Awesome. I like it.
Yeah. So it even supplants coffee, which of course is no surprise because, there's so many different varieties of tea, herbals and Camellia sinensis, the black tea that we know.
There you go.
So 1662 is the short answer when it really became popularised. From her and Charles, it then spread through the British colonies all around the world.
Yeah, right. Now, Jocah, you're saying like 3 million cups of tea are drunk during...
Billion.
3 billion?
A day.
Right. Okay, so now there are a lot of healing effects associated with tea, and one of the ones that's become more popular is turmeric. Did I say that right?
Of course you mean turmeric.
Turmeric, yeah. So could you tell us about turmeric?
Well, okay, so turmeric is obviously very popular nowadays, very well known as a healing product. So turmeric has been popular in Indian Ayurvedic medicine for over 3,000 years. So they've been using it for a very long time, unlike the tea plant itself. But yeah, so they've been using that. And the active ingredient, of course, in turmeric is curcumin that we know because scientists have told us that's what it's called. So in terms of its benefits, it is a powerful anti-inflammatory, which most people know that's the main fact that why people use turmeric. But it's also an antioxidant and a really strong one. And it's also a really strong alkalizer. So, and each of those things have really different benefits. And I have loads of information with me if you want to know some of the reasons why those things are good and why we should take them. But that's a bit sciencey.
No, we do.
We do.
Hit us with some.
So, in terms of anti-inflammation. So when your body's in a background state of inflammation all the time, your cells get degraded, everything just works harder and wears out. But the antioxidants are far more interesting because we get this thing called oxidative stress in the body, which is caused by free radicals, which our body naturally produces. They also occur in different foods. And the free radicals, if they get to a certain level, in proportion to where they should be, they then start attacking our cells. So they lead to cell degradation. They can degrade your DNA, and then they can trigger things in those sort of states and levels, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and they can even kill you. like, whoa, death. Like if your free radicals get too high. So you want antioxidants in your body to help combat that. No one wants to be dead.
No, that's right. Awesome.
Yeah. And the most interesting thing for all of us who are a little bit suffering from vanity is oxidative stress seems to have a pivotal role in aging in terms of the side effects of aging, like all of those things we don't want, as opposed to wisdom.
Yes, well, and I thought about when you were saying about turmeric and the inflammation, that also is leading to, as it's breaking down the body's cells, and you're getting worn out from constantly fighting inflammatories in the body, then that is also contributing to your aging.
Absolutely. We know that pain, ages us rapidly, and people that have a lot of chronic pain, we end up with pain lines just from all of the, the heaviness of it all. So in terms of like the alkalizing quality, which is something that some people know about, a lot of people don't, because we talk about acid alkaline diets, and you want to have things that are alkalizing as opposed to acidifying. So there's a whole list of like the majority of the Western diet is acid forming. But if you tip the balance in your body and you have a lot of acid forming substances in there, then it's a bit of a shocker because, oh wow, where do you even start with that? When you upset when you're in a natural state of pH balance, and you can't change very much, the body just shores that, but if you keep it up fairly in that higher level, bacteria, viruses, diseases have nothing to take hold of. They can only thrive in an acidic environment. So turmeric, of course, really helps with keeping our bodies in that alkaline state, which of course then boosts our immunity and makes us more resilient to, well, this is a very, present topic, viruses, bacteria, etc.
Yes, yeah. And you're seeing it more and more these days, aren't we? Like you can go to the coffee shop now and you can have a turmeric latte. I've only noticed in the last year or so that it started to gain in popularity.
Yeah, it's a sweeping wave around the world. It's just becoming really, really big. So it's a good time for, people to be starting to, it's so readily available in so many different forms. So it's a good time to be thinking about including turmeric.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to note too that if we look through history, maybe the inflammatories in our body are also increasing. So therefore the need for such things like turmeric are also increasing too.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of what causes acidity in our body, diet is actually, all the nasties in diet are secondary to one major acid former, and that's stress, actually. And, the modern world, oh my God, there are so many chances to get stressed.
Yes.
With money and viruses and, whatever it might be happening. It's just, so that's the number one. So you want to try and keep things alkalizing as much as possible. Turmeric really helps.
Now, I believe there's actually been scientific studies done. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the studies that have been done?
There never used to be so many studies done, but recently, of course, because it's in popularity, turmeric has been studied quite in depth now. And there was a really interesting one done in Thailand. In fact, it was done in 2 parts. In the article in the Connect magazine, we only mentioned one of them. I've done a bit more reading into the, the clinical research papers, which are a bit, brain draining. But so there was a secondary part to confirm their numbers. And so in the first one in 2009 in Thailand, they did 107 people, measuring them about osteoarthritis and the pain and inflammation from that, comparing the effects of curcumin from turmeric against ibuprofen, which is one of those anti-inflammatory chemical drugs. And so in the second part, they did 367 participants, and compared it again. That was in 2012. And what they discovered was that curcumin and ibuprofen compared directly across, there was no noticeable differences, insignificant difference in the effect of when they did all the tests, like how far they could then walk and all those sorts of things to test the effects of on the osteoarthritis. But there was one benefit. The ibuprofen caused more side effects in the gut than the turmeric did. It was a lot less aggressive. And so that's just amazing and vindicating in terms of a natural approach to health. And the other side of that, of course, is that turmeric, I didn't mention this before, also reduces pain. That's part of the anti-inflammatory thing, is it reduces pain. And so these people had greater mobility as well as, reduced restrictions and stuff, and pain. Everything went down. It was good. That's pretty impressive for a natural substance.
Indeed.
It pretty is. And you don't even have to say it correctly to work.
No, you just need to eat it.
Now, what are some of the other spices that are used in teas that maybe have healing properties?
Yeah, well, so we create this tea which is a turmeric-based tea, and so in that it's a chai. So traditionally, masala chai, as it's sometimes called, because chai in India just means tea, and of course that's literally what they drink is black tea with milk, and they call that chai. But in the West, chai has come to mean masala chai. So our tea is a chai, and so we have a bunch of different spices. And on this little handy chart, which for the video viewers, there it is, because I can never remember this stuff. I've researched this and I can never remember. So we have a list of other spices that are traditional. I was going to say traditional in chai, but not all chais are created the same, and they do various spices. But the general ones, or the ones that we include, are, so there's obviously the turmeric. We include nutmeg, true cinnamon, not the cassia, because that's actually toxic. Humans shouldn't eat cassia. Star anise, cardamom, cloves, black pepper, and we brew our tea with fresh ginger, because fresh ginger is just unlike the flavour of any dried form of ginger. It just doesn't have the same grunt factor. And
so does that chart have all healing benefits and everything
Yes,
of it? So can you tell me about cinnamon? Because I had a dream and there was big piles of cinnamon.
Right. Well, so we have listed here a couple of things, a couple of different categories. So there's the key actions, which are measured by science, and they have really scientific terms. And then there's the traditional information, which we, from traditional medicines and stuff that aren't necessarily scientifically proven as such. So, the old wives, what they would have done sort of thing. So in the case of true cinnamon, it's considered a warming stimulant, carminative, astringent. It's also called aromatic. I'm not sure what that does in terms of health benefits. It's an antispasmodic, which is good.
That's why I was dreaming about it.
Antiseptic, so it's antiseptic if you're a bit toxic there, and antiviral. So everyone should be having that right now.
Yeah.
Well, actually, cinnamon is my stripper name.
Right. Well,
Dear.
I hope you have good antiviral protection. And you do. So then traditionally, of course, they use it for boosting the immune system, for mental strength. It aids in managing diabetes. It helps to prevent cancer, helps to improve heart health, chronic diseases, beneficial in strengthening the bones, aids in treating cognitive disorders, and provides protection against fungal and bacterial infections, which is good for strippers. Called cinnamon.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So all those things, but you have to be careful with cinnamon not to take excess, because it has an excess warning. It can cause toxic effects.
All right, but it's in there too.
Yeah.
Now, another one of the key herbs, I believe, is nettle.
Yeah, so we do two different types of tea. One based on green tea, because it's a little bit more alkaline forming than the black tea, which is a bit more acidic and less caffeine, about half that of black tea. And the nettle one that we do is with nettle leaf. So nettle leaf is like a stinging nettle, but not the variety we have growing around the tropics, that has big prickly heart-shaped leaves. This is the one from Europe and Asia and stuff that's more elongated and far more serrated. For those that can see here, I have a photo, but anyway. So nettle leaf is also fairly well known. It also has a caution about excess intake, about reducing blood pressure, so probably good for people with high blood pressure, in fact. So its key qualities, it's an anti-allergic, anti-anaphylactic, which is interesting. It's also anti-inflammatory, it's a decongestant, and it's a diuretic, which is good for, if you've got fluid buildup and stuff. So it's mentioned in here about good for treating gout, relieves fatigue, anemia, because it's very high in iron, and I think it has vitamin C as well, so you absorb the iron from it. It's one of those things they say is really good for boosting your iron levels. Good for hay fever, asthma, and seasonal allergies, among other things. Bacterial infections, healthy skin. Yeah, it's an amazing plant.
Isn't it wonderful that we have access to all these healing plants, and then we can brew them into a cup of tea, and our bodies can enjoy the healing benefits from it?
And how simple is that and natural, because you're working with a whole food.
Yes.
Which is the way nature intended them to be used, and we just combine them into a tea that tastes good. Voila.
And into your normal tea time.
That's right, your tea time. That's it, you can have tea therapy. Of course, if you're drinking other things like just loads of black tea, or coffee isn't technically a tea, but it is steeped in the same way. You put a substance into water, you brew it. Both of those are highly acid forming and definitely not so good for the health. So it really depends on what you're putting in your tea.
Look, my parents and grandparents and aunties, they've been using tea therapy for years. They all gather around the table and have a cup of tea and chat. Could you tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to tea therapy?
Well, just going on that chat thing, that's really important, because the social component of tea drinking, like tea time, is really important for our health, about connection with our magazine name and all that. So that's really important. But for me personally, I've been living with fibromyalgia for about 20 years, and it was extreme back in the day when I created the turmeric tea that I've been drinking. I was permanently limping. I could barely walk. I could easily be stuck on the couch for 9 days at a stretch, and it'd take like 20 minutes to get to the toilet and back, just in pain like you wouldn't believe.
That would have been really hard before Netflix.
Yes, yes. And I was in the country at that time, so I didn't have good internet anyways. Thank God for Netflix. Yes. So I was already hand grinding spices every morning to make a chai, and because I just liked that freshness of it. And then somehow I bumped into information about turmeric, and I thought, wow, supplements were just becoming available, I think, at that time. This is about 8 years ago now. Were just becoming available, and I thought, but supplements should be supplemental, and I thought, I need this in my diet if I'm going to have a definite change, like in my diet regularly throughout the day. So I thought, well, I drink tea throughout the day. I wonder how turmeric would go. And lo and behold, I didn't actually realize, of course, turmeric is one of the main spices in curry, combined with all these other spices, a really good curry paste, actually.
Yeah.
And so it was like a match made in heaven. I couldn't believe what I'd created. And that was the green tea version. Started having 3 or 4 cups a day, and within several weeks, I was walking again. I mean, I know that sounds miraculous, but I'm almost in tears just thinking about the change that turmeric gave me in my life. And now I'm not permanently limping anymore. I still have flare-ups. It hasn't cured the condition, but in terms of management, oh my God, it's made a dramatic change for me personally.
That's a really beautiful to hear, and so happy for you that you found something that can help manage that pain and the inflammation. And how inspiring then to be able to share what worked for you with others, and how much change you can create in people's lives.
Totally. And the thing is, I've been doing this for 7 or 8 years now. I think it's 8 years, the green tea version. And I'm just not the world's best business person. I'm very right brain creative, deeply spiritual. I've never had that. But now I've got a group of people, my team, and they've helped, because people have been asking for years, tastes great, you should sell it. And it's like, I don't know how to do that, And but now we've got it on the market, and we decided we needed to do a caffeine-free variety for people that are caffeine sensitive, and I've become more so as I've, purified my body more, but just so that you could drink it at night without affecting your sleep, and so we made the nettle one. I tried so many different herbs to actually work in with the alchemy, and the nettle was just like, oh my God. And of course it's become our bestseller now, so it's blitzed the green tea, but it's a good thing. And so that was really how it all came about for me. And I've had tea parties. We'd get together and make up big pots of the stuff. Yep. And I've taken it to events, conscious dance events here locally, and people are going, wow, it's amazing, So it's got a social element.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, because one of the things about turmeric is actually how to get your body to absorb it.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Naturopath David Pearce talks about a lot of herbs, and it's very hard to absorb. So a tea form where it's watered down is probably one of the better ways, because it can be absorbed directly into the stomach and the body.
Yeah, well, actually, there are 2 things that make curcumin more readily bioavailable and absorbable, and that's black pepper, which temporarily blocks one of the enzymes from the liver, which would bind with it and make it just pass through your body. And the other thing is a healthy fat. So we always serve this with Cocoa Quench, which is a coconut-based milk, and the coconut fat, the oil in the coconut, makes it far more bioavailable. It's not the only form of healthy fat, of course, but it's it just works. Coconut and turmeric are just like a match, to the taste buds. Yep. And so in it goes, and absorb it comes,
So do you have black pepper in there as well?
Yeah, so there's black pepper in the mix. Yeah, and just not too much, because it can be a bit heating for some people. So yeah, that's in there. So that helps with the absorption, definitely. And we use it in a whole form. The teas are all 100% organic, because, you don't want to make a nice healthy tea and go, oh, would you like a side of pesticides with that? It's like, no thanks. No.
Well, thanks. That sounds really great. And of course, what we're going to do now, we're going to give some tea away.
Woohoo!
Woo! Now, of course, the show goes up on SoundCloud. So after we do the show, we edit it and we pop it up on SoundCloud. So if you'd like to win some of this amazing tea, all you need to do is pop a comment up on our Facebook page as soon as the SoundCloud article goes up, and you could win some tea. So just remember that. Look out for the tea article coming up on SoundCloud, and then make a comment and you could get some of this amazing tea. Well, thanks for that, Jocah. And coming up next, we'll be talking more with Jocah about the heart. So stay tuned to Cairns FM 89.1.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Connect in Harmony program on Can 89.1. I'm your host, Renee Cashman.
And I'm your host, Dave Chambers, and we've been talking to Jocah Lefay about tea therapy. Now, Jocah, in the Connect magazine, you've written a really great article on the heart. And one of the questions that you proposed was, what is the nature of the heart? So could you tell us about that?
Wow. You know, trying to even write anything about this, let alone speak about it, is very interesting because it's one of the most vast topics, you know, because the heart, as we understand it, is the vessel for love, the biggest topic, you know, that we could ever touch on. So, but in the article, I'm just exploring a few ideas about the fact that the heart isn't a separative or separated individual thing, even though we have the single chakra and the organ in our body. It's definitely interconnected. So one of the natures of the heart is this true interconnectedness. You know, for one to thrive, we all must thrive. So the heart's really focused on collective thriving, group evolution. And for that reason, it's linked into dispassionate compassion, which I'd just love to speak about it for a whole hour, but let's just say, leave that as a teaser. The idea that if you're too compassionately involved, you're not objective enough, you lose your objectivity, and then you no longer know what another or others need. You need to have that dispassionate connection so that you can actually remain objective, and so that, you know, whatever is the most appropriate, the most needed, you know, giving can be seen.
I like that. I don't know if I've ever quite heard that framing before. Now, people often get confused about what love really is, and you also propose the question, is it love? Is it really love that you are feeling? Talk a little bit about that.
There's been some humour going on in the background. So one of the things that's very interesting about the idea that love is people get confused. They think that love is an emotion. But if you want to look from a deep, like spiritual, esoteric perspective, you know, we know that love comes from the heart, but actually the emotions come from the solar plexus. They're beneath the heart. You know, they're down here in the lower centers. That's why, you know, when you're really got a lot of strong emotion, you feel it in your gut because that's where they emanate. So one of the main differences with love is that if strong emotions are present, then love isn't, because it's a bit like you can't be feeling fear while you're feeling love. You can't feel love while you're feeling fear. They're kind of mutually exclusive, and to greater and lesser degrees, depending on where you go. So if you've got really strong emotional attachment to somebody, that's going to occlude you to a great extent from really feeling love toward them, because it's kind of like it's a matter of vibration. Love, high vibration, emotions are a bit lower, and you can only be in one vibration at a time. So if you've got really strong, low vibrational emotions going on, for example, in your connection to a person, then you're not going to be able to really feel true love for them. It may come and go from day to day, of course, and moment to moment.
So what I'm understanding from what you're saying is sometimes we become really attached to somebody, and that attachment, or can even become a possessiveness. That's not love.
No, most certainly not. And that's on the interpersonal regard, but you know, because that comes in with control and expectations, and love is unconditional. I like to think of the heart like the sun. It shines indiscriminately upon all, no matter what. It gives to them equally.
Yes.
But of course, you know, no discussion about the heart and love is complete unless we talk about a couple of its key qualities, and that is harmlessness and non-violence. You know, you cannot say that you love something and then cause it harm. That's just not, I mean, it's just so illogical. I won't go into examples because it can be a little bit of a tricky subject, you know, when you start talking about, for example, what people eat or their relationship to animals or anything like this. You can get a little bit fuzzy and people get a bit like triggered. But let's just say, you know, if one is causing harm, then could you really say they're being loving? I would posit no. You don't cause harm to people that you love or things that you love. You just don't. That's just not the heart.
Yep.
Okay, so what you're saying there is, if I love bacon, I'm actually like attached to it. I'm not really loving it. Yeah,
I would say it's emotional attachment.
yeah. Okay.
It's probably based on the taste buds feedback, you know, that sort of thing.
So I'm not. It's not actually a pure form
It's
of
not
love.
really.
as
It's not
you
really
would
love.
describe it.
No.
It's more sort of like just me indulging my own taste buds.
Yeah. Well, love is an abstract principle. You know, desire and taste is certainly very personality based.
Now, in the article, you talked about some tools of how to transform this. So could you give us a few of those now?
Yeah, so when I write articles, I try to make the content engageable, that you can not just, here's not an opinion or some ideas, here's how you can engage with the information and utilize it. And one of the best tools I've ever found is questions, because questions go from closed statements to open to possibilities. And so for me, tools of transformation are always questions. And I did write a couple for this that were a bit interesting. I'm going to have to read these because I don't remember them verbatim or anything like that. Here's one that's really interesting. Do you consciously draw your emotions up into the heart to fuel its fires, and thereby simultaneously transmuting your lower nature? Now, this is an interesting thing. You could see this as a meditative practice, that the heart fires that people talk about in the heart, if we draw the emotions up, they're transmuted. So that takes your lower qualities and turns them into higher qualities. That's a really interesting principle or idea to sit with. Another question, do you look for opportunities for shared purpose with those you love? So we determine that the heart isn't separative. So when people ask, what is my purpose? Are they still being separative in their consciousness, or are they thinking collectively? So do you look for opportunities to co-create with people? Because that's the heart. I mean, even just saying that, I can just feel my little ticker going, it's great, hey? Yeah.
Now, one of the questions you did offer up also, Jocah, was how is your love in action? And I love that question. And I actually proposed it on Facebook for our Faces of the North question, and only one person responded. So I felt like maybe it was a bit too deep and meaningful. It was a bit hard for people to actually think about how they express their love. So then I asked if you could shapeshift into an animal, and then I had like 100 responses. So I thought that was just an interesting from 1 to 100 sort of thing on deep and light. So what have you want to tell us about that? How is your love in action?
So that's oh wow, there's so many different directions you could go with that. My mind's just suddenly going bonkers with possibilities. So I think again that comes back to this idea of we don't want to just sort of think loving thoughts, although even thinking loving thoughts changes, what I call a thoughtosphere. It adds beauty to the world. And so, but I think it comes back to, what are you giving? It comes back to the qualities of the heart, selflessness, aspiration, shared purpose, wisdom, let's just say loving kindness, all of these beautiful qualities. So if you hold those as values, that's great, but you need to take action on them, because if you don't act on them, they're just theories. And so, where do you apply loving kindness? Are you forgiving of people with their limitations? One of the ones that I've written in the article, which is quite amusing, is to do with conversation. This quote that you may have heard before: small minds speak about people, average minds speak about events, great minds speak about ideas. So, and I've asked the question, do you sacrifice your greatness for smallness? Do you just get caught up in idle gossip all the time and just not adding anything? But if you're actually acting from love, are you adding to exploring ideas of how to make the world a better place?
So what you're actually saying there, that love in action could be tolerance.
Yes, absolutely.
So
that's
if
an active
if
form
you're
of
not
it.
strangling the shit out of that person that really annoys you, you're actually loving.
Absolutely.
It could be because you're sort of calm, you're accepting them and being tolerant. So tolerance is probably one of the easiest ways to express love.
Yeah, well, non-judgment. It's, a classic Eastern principle. Non-judgment, tolerance, forgiveness. They're all in the same package together, aren't they? And if you're actually... Exactly, I would agree. That's a very good expression of love. And as we know with Renee, I'm going to say small acts of random kindness. This is a nice way. It adds joy to someone's life. And is joy not an expression of love? A link to the heart? Surely it is. It must be.
It is. It is indeed joy. Now, I want to propose something, because something that you said sort of like neeks me, okay? So that is that you were saying that you can only feel the love vibration if there's any other sort of emotion in there that you're not feeling the love. Now, the reason why I go with that one is because I found it amazing. Like, I was confused by my ability to feel two extreme emotions at once. I was feeling, when my son died, absolute despair, and then I was falling in love with Rob at the same time. So I was like, how can I have both of these feelings in my heart, grief and despair, and yet falling in love in the same time? For me, it was like night and day. And the only way I could make sense of it was yin and yang. Look, the earth can experience night and day at the same time. And so can I. That's how I could make sense of it. So just, I don't know, is there something there you can help me with?
Probably a qualifier I didn't add was in regards, because you're talking about two different people, and I guess I probably should have qualified about a singular event or a singular person. It's
yes.
very hard to hold both at the
I
same
see.
time. But you've raised an interesting point, and just even reflecting on that, I'm thinking, well, the emotions are emanating from the solar plexus, the heart, emanating love. Can we be identified in both at the same time, anchored deeply in both at the same time? It's an interesting contemplation.
It is.
I think it's worthy. But I mean, if we were talking about your example, then yes, your emotional grief would have been really strong in the solar plexus, and then yet your heart is being stimulated by another person. So are they both not active? And perhaps the love that you were feeling toward Rob would have been naturally drawing up that grief emotion and helping you transmute it. I imagine it would have made it easier.
Well, don't we only
If
feel...
I could dare say such a thing.
Well, don't we only feel grief if we have loved?
Actually, I think grief can sometimes be caused through loss of emotional attachment.
You haven't met any
let's
of
go.
my ex-wives. You can feel grief at any time.
But yeah, I mean, I would say I'm not completely 100% sold on what I'd said about that. It's just, it's a new contemplation about vibration
Yes.
and about the fact that if one is vibrating in fear, then it's near impossible to feel love. And if you're vibrating in love, you just cannot feel fear. And so I guess I'm looking at that, and maybe it gets more muddy in between when you're not talking about extremes like that. Love and fear are quite opposite ends of the spectrum. Perhaps, perhaps grief or processing of grief is a doorway to the heart.
Yeah. Maybe it's two sides of the coin, that love can produce both joy and grief. I don't know. But anyway.
It's an interesting contemplation.
It is.
Yeah.
We'll have to contemplate and come up with some answers about it some other time.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing all of that, Jocah. Stay tuned. Coming up next, we'll be sharing Jocah's contact details. Welcome back. You're listening to the Connect in Harmony program on Cairns FM 89.1. I'm your host, Renee Cashman, and today we've been speaking with Jocah from Gruntea. Now, where can people find your medicinal tea, Jocah?
Right, well, several places. The main one is our website, because we have a web shop, and that's called grunteaemporium.com.au. So Gruntea, for all you listeners who can't see the boxes sitting in front of us, is GRUNTEA, and then Emporium, EMPORIUM.com.au. So that's the easiest place. But we also do the Tanks markets, weather permitting. So this is just for local, obviously.
Yep.
Younger borough markets, when we can get a spot, because they're really hard to get into. We've just started doing. If you go down to Snoogies in town, awesome food. They also serve hot cups of Gruntea, so you can actually go and get a hot cuppa in town. And I think we have currently stock on the shelf at Whole Life and Peconi's and the P Street, what used to be called the P Street Chemist. They've, if not, asked for it because they usually have it on the shelf. So that's it at the moment, but yeah.
Good start. Great.
Mm-hmm.
And Jocah, if people would like to get in contact with you personally, how can they do that?
Yeah, so obviously if it's about the tea, then just the contact form on the Gruntea Emporium website. But if you want to talk to me about the deeper writing, the heart article, etc., then my website's called authenticblaze.org, and just the contact form there is really easy. So that's authentic, AUTHENTIC, blaze, BLAZE.org, and that's where you'll find all my writings. And there's contact forms the easiest way.
Excellent. Of course, you can read all about it in the latest issue of the Connect magazine, now in full glossy colour, which can be found at all good health food stores, cafes across Townsville, Cairns, FNQ, which that probably means the Tablelands as well. So stay tuned, because coming up is our gratitude segment. And welcome back to the Connect in Harmony program on Cairns FM 89.1. I'm your host, Dave Chambers, and I'm here with Renee and our guest, Jocah. And of course, it's our gratitude segment. So, Jocah, do you have a favourite gratitude quote for us?
Well, that's interesting. I have a little quote, and I also have something a bit more juicy. Well, I think it's a bit more juicy. So the quote that I brought with me today is this: gratitude is the hallmark of an enlightened soul. Mm-hmm. Ooh, that comes, I don't know if you want to know where that comes from. That's Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 2, which is a book by Alice Bailey. It's just a little one-liner. I like the idea that gratitude represents, someone with a bit of advanced evolution. I think it's kind of nice.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. The other thing I brought was actually from my own website, for the Authentic Blaze. I actually saw this as a quote, and it's actually a question. I consider it a power question. How can life get even better? That's a question. I believe it relates to gratitude, because I break it all down in the post, but the last part, which talks about why it was linked to gratitude, is that when you're saying even better, it means you're already acknowledging that it's awesome, that your life is already amazing. And is that not like the pure essence of what gratitude is? And I think it's a great question to sit with. How can life get even better? Even implies it's already great. So
Fantastic. So answer that question for us. How does your life get even better?
Oh, on the spot.
He's under the pump now. You want to see him sweat.
How can life get even better? Wow. Well, to start with, if this interview turns out all right and everyone's a bit inspired, that'll be great. Even better. I think for me, it's always about more opportunities to share joy, to share insights. And, my writing is all about contemplations. It's about getting people to think. It's about opening up. Instead of like, this is, that is, everything else, all these statements in the mind, they're all closed doors, they're walls. I'm all about the questions. I want to open it up. So to get even better, for me, it would be if everyone embraced asking questions, seeking questions. Oh my God, I'd love to have a topic to talk about that instead of seeking answers.
Yes,
Well,
seeking questions.
Well, that's interesting. When I was involved in tourism, I was out on the Barrier Reef, and we used to say there are no silly questions, except for maybe, does that rock go all the way to the bottom?
Well, that is a silly question. But, yes.
Dave, what would you like to express gratitude today, or how can your life be even better?
Oh dear, I guess if I had a dog, I think I've actually been hanging out with a friend's dog. I got to take it for walks on the weekend and stuff like that. And that's one of the things I've missed.
Yes.
Is actually having a dog. I've always had dogs for a while. So I think if I got myself another dog, I think life would get really good, and then I could forget about women. What about you, Renee? What would you like? How could your life get any better? Come on.
Okay, and any better for me? I think my life would get better if I didn't have so much to do, or maybe if I had some more help. My life would be better because I'd have a little bit more grace, and I could spend a little bit more time doing some more things that I love, like drawing and playing my flute, and that's about all. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy. How could it even get even better? I think also I like also just tossing that up and proposing it sort of like to spirit, to the great spirit, to the universe. Show me how it can get even better than I can even imagine for myself, because I think sometimes what we do think is better, and it's still only so far up the scale, where maybe if we could open up to even more possibilities, we could be skyrocketing in doing things that we never even imagined before. So to answer your question, Dave, a little bit of help, and also just leaving it open and sort of saying to spirit, come on, show me how it does.
Well, that sounds really good, Renee. Actually, if there are any psychologists or psychiatrists out there that could give Renee a bit of help, or maybe Renee could just spend 15 minutes a day sitting under a tree playing a flute, it might be better.
I do that already. All right. Thank you, Jocah. Thanks for joining us on today's show. Thanks for sharing grunt tea with us. Thanks for the cuppa. It's delicious. And thanks for your wisdom as well. Thanks a lot joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It's a bit nerve-wracking, but it was good value.